Hello, folks, and welcome to this week's edition of the Renegades of Flow. And in the studio is my much wiser, smarter, better-looking partner in crime and co-pilot, Emily. For the few people that don't know you, as we broaden your fame, what are you known for, and what would you like to be known for?
Oh, you asked me that last week, Bernie. I think I should ask you, what are you known for?
Oh dear, table turning. You know what? I'm known for. When I ask people, I'm known for connecting people, and I really like that. And I would actually like to be known for producing a year's worth of consistent content online that was very, very helpful to people, and for being able to play the piano. But right now, it's for connecting people.
I would have pegged you for, wanting to have a full head of hair, but, those other things are good too.
I shave this by choice. It's for that Bruce Willis, Stephen Covey, Seth Godin, Moby look that I'm going for.
Well, it works for you. It works for you.
I needed to hear that. So, where should we kick off today? I wondered if we needed to give a little explanation to our Renegades of Flow thing, because
let's talk about what it means, why we are saying Renegades of Flow, where that came from. Absolutely.
So, gee, Emily, what do you mean by Renegades of Flow?
Renegades in the sense that we tend to be fringe dwellers, outsiders, the lunatic fringe, as it were, when it comes to work. In any case, we don't fit in with the mainstream. You're not going to find us in a cubicle anywhere. And more to the point, interacting with us is going to be surprising, often inspiring, very creative, even when we do sort of dry stuff. And when it comes to flow, we're talking about the flow of work, the flow of creativity, the flow of getting things done. So we are renegades of flow.
If we could buy the licensing, I'd get that Amy McDonald song. Let's start a band. I'll put that in the show notes for the people that don't know that. That feels very at home, and that feels very at home in all the different co-working spaces and projects I've been in over the years, particularly in the We Share gang, and when we were in at work hubs and bathtub and boardroom, that getting people together. And I found around 10 years ago, there was lots of people bumping into each other at conferences and festivals and co-working spaces, and the co-working spaces were mostly in London. And I don't feel it's quite like this anymore, because co-working and freelancing has gone more mainstream, but there were people trying to find their people, and they were often those. There was some folks around who would say they're unemployable, and I never really liked that very much myself, but I thought it was really cute. It's like, I'm unemployable. I can't function in a job. And some people were saying that being a bit too cool for their own good. But what I discovered over time is that, because of dyslexia and ADHD and just how things occur to me, it's not like I don't want to get a job because I hate people that have jobs, because jobs are really important. And it is amazing how many entrepreneurs run around criticizing for people wanting to have jobs and then build companies where they need to employ people. I find that a little bit tricky.
Yeah, it's important to understand that there's a difference too between what we're talking about of not working in a job and what the other people you're talking about. There's the people who don't want to work in a regular job, and they would prefer to have a different work style, which is fine for what it is. But then there are the people who actually can't function. If I'm in a room with a lot of ambient noise, I can't hear the person who's sitting next to me because of my neurodivergence. I just literally can't hear them. Not because my hearing is bad, but because it's so good. It's like all of my senses are turned up to 11. So when I need to focus, I really have to put myself in a private room and put on a pair of headphones, and then I can focus extremely well, better than a lot of people can.
Like Daredevil in Marvel.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Far less bloody, though. Oh my goodness, that show is gory.
I loved it. Anyway, but let me not open the comic book thing. That's exactly the sort of thing I mean, because there's lots of examples like that. And in terms of the type of room I end up working in, I was talking about this with Iris on another podcast, is when I sit down to work, if there's too many things, I just can't concentrate. And it's not like, nowadays I sit there and go, this is nuts. I can't concentrate. I know I need to concentrate. I need to concentrate. I'm going to concentrate. Oh, I can't concentrate. And it's like those seagulls in Finding Nemo, like Mike, 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 Mike. And I have to go when I have to sit down and work on for 2 hours on either writing something or going through some details around an event or a podcast or a piece of work. I have to go somewhere like deadly quiet where no one can speak to me.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the advantages to going to like specific kinds of co-working spaces. Right now, I'm just working from home. Eventually, I'd like to have my own co-working desk, but I know for a fact it would need to be a private room. It couldn't be like in the bullpen, just because I won't. I will dither and jump from one task to another. My attention will be so fragmented. And I've learned to work with that. It's not something I have a choice about any more than you have a choice about your ADHD and your dyslexia. We just have to work with it. And I think that we do pretty well overall.
Yep.
But that's also really helpful to have a partner. And you and I have always worked really well together because our neurodivergence tends to be differently divergent. Where I'm grounded, you're very energetic. And I need that energy to pull me out of my thoughts so that I can do things with my thoughts. And you need the groundedness to keep you, walking in a straight line.
Definitely. I thought I needed a manager. I needed a co-pilot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to two things I need to pick up on there is one, the podcast we did. I think either you or I did with Lucy before the Workspace Design Show.
It was you.
We were talking about how we have to accept responsibility for our condition. So we can't demand. We can't take a co-working space to court because it has neglected to put in soundproofing to accommodate our needs.
Right. Well, and I think there's a prevailing attitude that if you work hard enough and you do the right things, then your neurodivergence or your difference or your disability will not matter, will not hold you back. And I think it's important to remember and to realize that the people who are pushing through those things are pushing through harder in order to rise above it and in order to have it as sort of the base of their being that uplifts them rather than weighs them down in a society that does not understand or appreciate those differences. So really, it's like a Herculean effort to come to into this world that does not even acknowledge or recognize those difficulties.
I really agree with that. Because I found out I finally got tested at university, and that's when, and I was having a meltdown about reading all these books for my English literature degree, and my wife looked at me like, "Oh dear, is this going to be is this going to be the next 5 years?" And she just said, "There must be a way to find. This is maybe 20 years ago now. There must be a way to listen to these, an audio version of these books online." And it never occurred to me you could get audio versions of books. I don't know why, because I listen to so many podcasts and on my iPod Nano or whatever it's called. And so she found audible.com, and I've just read loads there. And I've
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored.
Continue.
Other platforms are available. But yeah, I basically done my whole education by audiobook. And then when I see people nowadays, I say, before I'm about to mansplain something, I say, how do you learn best? Is it like video or reading or drawing or audio?
Mm-hmm.
And rather than sending them, You should read. If someone says to me you should read these 6 books, I'm never going to do it unless it's audio.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm such a proponent for people using whatever technology works for them instead of having like, oh no, everybody in the company has to use this kind of a thing, because you just don't know. There may be an accommodation on one that the other one doesn't have. So even though it works for your business, it might be better for the productivity of your team to actually provide a choice in different ways to interact with the work, in order to get the flow to happen. If you It's not one size fits all when it comes to learning, and it's not one size fits all when it comes to working.
Talking of what tool to use, how about last week when our universe fell apart and we put it back together before sunrise?
Well, it went better than I thought it would. For the people listening, Monday morning last week, which was March, um, oh God, I don't even
The
know,
11th, something like that.
11th, was that it? Um, I was I was going down the stairs to let one of my kids into the house who had locked themselves out, and I slipped on the top step and fell down the stairs. It was a hell of a way to start the work week. So I was pretty messed up, and I was out of it, in shock, really, like car accident shock, kind of shock, for about 3 days. And I was trying to make it work, but Bernie was great. He said, no, as soon as we got in the call in the morning, I'm like, I think I'm okay. He says, you don't sound like you're okay. Maybe you should unplug today. And I did. You got to listen to your partner, because it's good to have not even just in your life partner. I have my husband, Bernie has his wife. They understand us, they know us, and they're like, no, it doesn't seem like that. It seems like you need to have this. It's good to have that relationship with your work partner too, where they're like, you sound different. It's not like you think. You shouldn't power your way through this. And I have a very American attitude about that, and I'm trying not to, where I try to push work into everything.
So what happened? What happened next? We're falling down the stairs. We
Well, ordinarily, I'm the one who brings the groundedness. But in this case, because you knew I was injured, you knew that I needed help, and that I needed the reassurance and the insight and the objectivity to see that no, I was not ready to get back to work. You you held the line and kept everything going, and you did a fantastic job at it too. And I think that that's one of the advantages to having a partner, is if you were on your own and something happened, and I'm the same way. If I'm on my own and working for myself and something happens and it's all on you, you might tend to get a little bit stuck in your head, dwelling on the negative. Oh, this is happening again. That kind of attitude. But because you have a partner, you have to show up for.
yeah, definitely.
You put that extra effort in, to show up and to reassure them and say, no, you need to heal, you need to figure this out, and I will make sure everything is done while you're out.
There's another bit about like we use a tool called Upbase, which is like a much quieter, and I did say quieter version of Trello, and we run a Scrum system. And there are definitely times where I sort of, usually when I'm in a bit of a panic, I avoid looking at the Kanban Scrum board because I'm like devastated by what to do, and I get very overwhelmed in the moment. But everything was held there. It's kind of like, I'm going to call it the was it you say the source of truth or the center of truth? So you go and look at what's on there, and the only thing you need to do is what's on there, because I can invent a million other things I need to do because they seem more shiny and interesting than what we've agreed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing, and I've heard other people say this actually when I've been speaking to them in a more kind of, how do you get it all done? Well, we don't get it all done. Is just because it's on the board doesn't mean it's getting out. It's all going to get done, but it's not, because I feel there's a thing going around where if you use, Monday or Asana or Trello or Basecamp, magically all the work happens. And that goes back to your earlier point of it doesn't actually matter where it is.
Yeah.
And years ago, there's a guy in the UK called Tom Ball, and we were talking years ago about which app was to use, and this was before Trello, anyone knew what Trello was. And he said, I just changed, project apps every few months because I take my work to the app. I don't do my work because of the app. And it's like, what, knowing what you're working on is like not dependent on where you write it down.
No, it is. And it's good to hear you say that because I actually do the same thing where every couple of months I'll switch to a different management system. It's not that the management system that I had, the task management system I had before, wasn't working, but I can tell after a certain point when cards start getting stale, when projects start getting stale, I need to recontextualize all that information and put it into a new interface. And I have in the past gone from Asana to Trello and from Trello to, whatever else. And then I'll go back to Asana. And it's not because I didn't like it in the first place. It's because they're really interchangeable. And just recontextualizing it. And even though there might be a problem with one, that there isn't a problem with the other, or it doesn't really make sense in one way. If I just do it for 3 or 4 months, I can switch back and it's fine. And it might seem like that's a lot more of a headache and work, but because it's part of my flow of work, because it helps me re-engage and reorganize and recommit to the goals I have during my workflow, it just makes everything work a lot better so that it's not time wasted. It's actually making me more productive.
And the other thing is, whatever app you got it in, I've been on, because I've been freelancing and consulting for so long. I've always been with a group of other people, like part of an agency as an outsider or something like that, or working on a project with a load of other, independent economic agents. And I've worked with groups of people that put everything, not in a you have to do this, office hours movie kind of way. They put everything in the project tool so everybody can find it. And then I've worked in other teams where people go, yeah, it's really great. And then no one looks at the project tool and it all falls apart. And you hemorrhage so much time looking for, Google Drive links and Dropbox links and where's the artwork and what page in Canva it is. But everything in one place in a, committed way rather than a you have to do this because you're an awkward boy or girl way is a great way to approach it. There's something about the energy of what we're working on right now, because I just found myself saying this to Anne and my mate Jamie, that they go, how are you? And like, I'm happy but hectic. And there have definitely been times where I've been like overwhelmed, depressed, and sunk, dying in quicksand. But at the moment, there's the thing with the website happened. You fell down the stairs. Last week, our podcast, 100 episodes of this podcast disappeared, and we had to get them back.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't feel finished. And it wasn't. And it has been times where I've been. I'm sure you don't do this, Emily, but when you're like deluded into happiness, but I'm like, oh my God, I've got to sort this out. Like someone's holding my child over a tank of hungry piranhas. I've got to swim the ocean by 6 o'clock tonight, and it's really nice having that feeling. There wasn't a question in there at all. Sorry. But I felt working with clarity and purpose helped keep that energy high.
Yeah. And
I still can't find a question.
right.
Sorry.
Well, no, it's okay. Part of the energy and clarity and purpose was just the emotional obligation of showing up for your partner who can't be there. And especially since the website thing happened, you did so great on that because I'm the website developer of the two of us, and you went and built a new website because the old one broke while I was out. That was amazing. I was so impressed with it. And it doesn't have to be like perfect. It's important to get like that with your work where you're not aiming for perfection, because that's not possible. If you try to aim for perfection, I know that there are people out there who say that they, always aim for perfection because they'll surpass where they actually wanted to be. But that can be incredibly demoralizing to never meet your goal.
With that, why I was able to build that is because, so as you were saying that, it just clicked to me. So the last time I got good at web development's probably stretching it a bit more. Last time I got good at like using templates was in around 2014 when I was in Mainyard Studios in Hackney, and I sat next to Niels, who was a full blown WordPress
Yeah,
and
I
everything
remember
else
Niels.
developer, and and I would. That was the time when we started the Right Club, and then we talk a lot about productivity together, and we had this rule of like we're not allowed to talk when we're at the desk because we would just say, "Oh, look at this," and I couldn't resist it. I'd be like, "Oh, Niels, look at this song," and so we were like, "This is productive time," and it was in a nice, disciplined kind of way. So I'd be trying to fix something on my website, and he would look over, and he'd be like, "Okay, press that button there, go into that menu, click that. There we go. Now shut up and get on with it." So, and I was able to do that website because we come online together and we work through things together. And all the other work we've been doing, in the last, 6, 7 months, building, the London co-working assembly and swapping my thing over and all the stuff we've done in Divi, when it came to going into those menus in WP Engine, it was I knew where I was going. And I think that's rather than like saying, I'm going to do this and running off and everyone getting on with their own work, like it's almost like paired programming is a really good thing to do, particularly if you work like we do.
Right. Yeah. I know for my part, I've had to, and I know you have too, just had to reinvent my career over and over. That's becoming much more of a common thing where every 5 years you have to relaunch your career. You have to have an ongoing brand, even if you're doing, what, mainstream work or whatever it might be. And it's really easy to get caught up in all of the exciting possibilities because it's energizing to have new ideas and to make new connections. And it feels very creative, and it is very creative. But at the same time, to have a goal, an objective, and to funnel that energy in a particular direction, it can be very difficult to tell when am I getting off topic, when am I getting away from the goal. This feels really exciting and right, and maybe it is right for next year or something. But that's why you have the backlog. We have our it's basically a Kanban board that we use. When you have those sort of exciting new ideas, I always say just commit it to the backlog. And if it's when we come back to the backlog after the sprint's over and we look over everything and we do our retrospective, if it's still relevant, it can be worked into the workflow. But that's a way to kind of veer it off from taking over your presence of mind when you're trying to get things done towards a goal. It's still there. It's waiting in the backlog. You can check it out at your retrospective. And it's amazing how often those things, when you come back to it 2 weeks later, you're like, what was I thinking about? I'm already doing this here. Or no, this isn't really relevant. But every once in a while, yes, it'll be like, you know what? This is the perfect solution. But it's just really not that often. In writing, we call it killing your darlings. When you have this special idea for a scene, which it doesn't really move the plot along, but it excites you and it keeps you up at night and you keep rewriting it and rewriting it. Those are usually the scenes that you need to delete from the end of the book. And sometimes it's useful to write them anyway, just for your own, edification, just to not just get it out of your system, but it might also inform the story in a certain way without actually being part of the story. They actually say that a good portion of what writers write that are actually finished, polished scenes won't make it into the final draft. I usually cut about 30%, because the reader doesn't need to hear all that, doesn't need to read all that.
There is, because we do that 750 words thing, and the amount of stuff I write in there that never goes anywhere, but it's really good to go out like that, or get it out, or see it, or
Yeah, it's like priming the pump, right? You gotta. you got to pour a little water in before the water will flow in the other direction. But you have to understand that it's going in the opposite direction. It's not what you can't be convinced that that's the way it should flow. It should flow the other direction.
But that's one of the things, just, like repeatedly listening to our good friend Stephen Pressfield, the amount of I never didn't believe him, but as time's gone on, I'm more prepared than ever to sit down and do stuff that won't go anywhere, because it unlocks the next part of the next chamber to make something actually happen. The backlog thing is one of the best things to ever happen. And in the 12-week year, which I'm been doing since 2018, one of the best things about that is you living life in 12-week year chunks, and anything that isn't going to happen in this 12 years, you just bump to the next 12 years. So it's like, I think I'll run 12 marathons in 6 days. And you go, well, I can't do that this 12 weeks, so I'll put it in the next 12 weeks. And after like 3 goes, you realize I'm never going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many things I used to say. There was back in work hubs in Houston, Phil and me try to do something like 20 goals in 1 month, and we ended up doing 2 of them. And it was like this, it should have been a very bad TV show. But it was amazing, like what made it and what didn't. And I can't actually remember what made it and what didn't. But there was something about, obviously, doing too many things at the same time doesn't work. But the ones that seemed like a really cool idea but just weren't that important died first. So we probably could have like walked to Sydney in Australia, but dropped off on something else. Can't think of a funny example, but it's amazing when you park something how important it stays.
Well, and I can draw a bit of an allegory with like media literacy. How ever since social media came onto the scene, it's been increasingly glutted with these sort of short-term attention, not filled with fact, but filled with a lot of emotion sort of content. And you have to be very wary of it. It's sort of the same thing psychologically, where you want to engage with it because it's cool and it's interesting and exciting, and it gives you that sort of savory, sweet feeling of candy in your mouth, cotton candy kind of feeling. But it's going to make you feel a little sick later. And with work, when you engage with those ideas, it can give you a little bit of a short-term sugar boost, but ultimately you can't exist on that. Or at least the people that do are often engaging in predatory practices.
I know what you mean. I've lost my craving for the short-term sugar boost in the work.
You've been listening to the Renegades of Flow podcast with Bernie Mitchell and Emily Breeder. You can find our contact information in the show notes. Thanks for listening.